Hey everyone, it's Jim the Ape, and I didn't want to have to make a video like this, but unfortunately the world we live in is so insane that I simply cannot sit on the sidelines and say nothing. It's funny, because I was actually in the midst of working on a more comedy-driven and light-hearted kind of video when all this shit went down, and I promise that after I make this video, I will continue working on that one, and it will be out soon. But since I already feel late to the party as it is, I might as well get this over with. Now, part of the reason it's taken me so long to talk about this in comparison with other YouTubers is because I've been, well, I don't think depressed is necessarily the right word, but I have been feeling bogged down by recent events. And I'm not going to go into tremendous detail because then this video will be ridiculously long and boring. And also, I'm not a news reporter, so I don't feel the need to examine every single minute detail of a story while giving an opinion on it. Alright, enough rambling, Jim. Get to the point. So, there were a couple of police shootings within about 48 hours of each other. One was in Louisiana, and the decedent was a man named Alton Sterling, who had been apparently selling CDs outside of a convenience store, I think it was. The other was in Minnesota, and the victim was a man named Philando Castile. Both were black men, and both are now dead. However, I would say that the two incidents were also very different in the way they played out. In the case of Alton Sterling, there was a call to police saying he had a gun and was pointing it at someone. When he was shot, he was already pinned to the ground by officers. Now, to be fair, he had a criminal record, and therefore the gun he had in his possession was illegal. But his case also serves as a reminder of just how outdated and dangerous the 3 strikes rule is. Because whether he resisted or not, he was on his last strike. So, a criminal who is on their last strike and knows that as soon as they're caught committing another crime, it's either life in prison or the coward's way out, their behavior is going to be a lot more erratic and is going to create a much more volatile and potentially fatal situation. Not to mention, the 3 strikes rule and life in prison in general is symptomatic of the biggest problem with our justice system. The fact that it is based more on punishment and vengeance than it is about reformation and rehabilitation. In the case of Philando Castile, he was in the car with his girlfriend during a traffic stop where apparently they were pulled over for a busted taillight. From what I gather, the officer asked him to show him his license and registration. So he reached for the glove box, and the officer, apparently fearing for his life, shot him multiple times. The weird thing about this is the fact that the girlfriend not only took cell phone video, but then posted it to Facebook. I actually saw it on my social media somewhere, and it began to autoplay with the sound muted, and I didn't even think it was real at first. It's a long story, but the poor grammar of the reposter's description made it seem like it could have been an elaborate prank, and I hadn't heard the story at that point. I only saw the first few seconds of it. But in this case, it does seem like a more clear-cut example of a violently overreactionary police officer unnecessarily taking the life of another person due to rampant paranoia. And I'm not saying that in either case the deceased men were blameless, nor that they deserved what happened. In Alton's case, he was breaking the law, of course, but given the neighborhood, I think it's understandable why he would want to own a gun for self-defense. I also think he'd been robbed just before that, and that's pretty much why he got the gun. In Philando's case, I'm not sure whether or not he had a criminal record, but apparently he had a gun, for which he had a permit, and he apparently told the officer as much. Nor am I trying to demonize the officers. The ones in Louisiana may have been aware of the gun that was mentioned in the 911 call, and maybe he was reaching for it, or maybe he was trying to grab one of the officers' weapons, either one of their guns or a taser or something, and then maybe they reacted to try and prevent that. The cop in Minnesota seems like he was more in the wrong, but maybe there was some level of genuine fear fear there, albeit most likely unwarranted. That's the thing, though. The one thing that everyone seems to be afraid of. It's called nuance. But that's not the end of the story, because a few nights ago, at a protest event in Dallas, someone opened fire and killed a handful of cops and injured several others. It may have been multiple shooters, although I have only heard one that's been named so far. By the way, I won't say his name, because it's possible that he did it for fame, and because fuck him, but there was also some weirdness with this one, because another man, by the name of Mark Hughes, was falsely accused of being the suspect on Twitter by the Dallas PD's official page. He apparently turned himself in immediately and was interrogated for about half an hour, and supposedly he also asked the police officers what he could do to help, so he was very cooperative. But so far, it looks like Dallas PD has not apologized for the false accusation and for most likely fucking up this guy's life. So, these incidents have sparked discussions all across the internet and beyond about the issues of police brutality and race relations, and not all of that discussion has been civil. In fact, there is a particularly haunting image floating around that may have in part sparked the shooting in Dallas. I wouldn't be so stupid as to blame the entire thing on the image, but for similar reasons as to why I'm not telling you the shooter's name, I won't be showing you the image either. In fact, if you spend any amount of time on social media, you've probably seen it already. It's a drawing of a police officer on his knees and a hooded figure slicing his throat. It's absolutely fucking disgusting. And anyone who shared it out of genuine agreement with its message is a horrible human being, the likes of which makes me hope I'm wrong about hell not being real. But for me, the broader takeaway from this is that violence only begets more violence. It's like the saying, eye for an eye and the whole world goes blind. In fact, if you really think about the shooting in Dallas, it doesn't make much sense as a retaliation for the other two shootings. Because if Alton Sterling and Philando Castile were killed because police officers feared for their lives around them, well then congratulations, asshat, you just gave them a reason to be. This is not how you repair relations between law enforcement and the citizenry. Shit like this only makes matters worse. And speaking of matters, not only has the so-called Black Lives Matter movement not been in vocal opposition to the actions of this individual, but many of them have spoken out in support of it. I can only imagine what Black Hitler thought of it, and I'm not going to go look at his YouTube channel to find out. But whatever, that's besides the point. The point is, those people condoning and celebrating this act of violence are no better than the Muslims who condone and celebrate acts of religious extremism like the shooting in Orlando and the several other terrorist attacks that have happened since then. I call it the 3 C's principle. That is to say, I will have a problem with anyone who commits, condones, or celebrates acts of violence after the fact. My preference starts with a C as well, and that is that you flat out condemn acts of violence in the name of an ideology or a religion or politics. But technically, that is optional. If you say nothing, I consider you neutral. Of course, any idea can be taken to a violent extreme. Ironically, even pacifism. Also, violent criminals and murderers come in all shapes and sizes, and they kill for all different reasons. But the strongest potential motivator is when there is an extreme religious or political agenda at play. Now, we all have issues that we get passionate about, and there are things that happen in this world that piss us off to no end. In my case, one of the biggest points of contention is the fact that even in a supposedly advanced and civilized Western society, you humans still find it normal and perfectly acceptable to cut off a piece of skin from a newborn baby's genitals for no medically necessary reason. But of course, only the male children. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to go around trying to kill doctors who perform circumcision or parents who have it done to their sons. ones because I am a sane and rational higher primate. I approach such problems through verbal expression and peaceful argumentation, even if it does get a little heated sometimes. I want to close this video by saying that I truly feel for the victims of these tragedies and their families and friends, those of the officers killed and of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile. I hope that we can come together as primates and try to figure out a way to reduce the likelihood of these kinds of events happening in the future. I don't think it's a one-dimensional, simple answer, by the way. And I just want to send the message that we are all connected through biological evolution as well as through the planet that we all share. And finally, I wish I could play you a song without fear of getting copyright flagged, but I do have a song in mind. So I'll link it in the description and probably put an annotation on the screen. The song I'm referring to is called One, and it's by the Irish band U2. The message I want to emphasize in this song is best represented by the lyrics, "One love, one blood, one life, you've got to do what you should. One life with each other, sisters, brothers." And with that, I leave you. I hope you found this video poignant, or informative, or entertaining in some way. I'll catch you next time. Stay great, apes.